My name is Henrietta May Colton, and I'm 78 years old. I've lived my entire life for others. I was a schoolteacher in a dusty little Texas town called Maple Ridge, and I raised my daughter, Charlene, completely on my own after her daddy died in a tractor accident when she was just 3. I gave her everything I had, and then some. I used to believe that if you gave love, you'd get it back. That if you sacrificed enough, someone would see it. But let me tell you something, not every seed you water grows into a flower. It was a cold March evening, rain tapping like fingers on the windowpane, when I stood in Charlene's living room with my worn-out suitcase in one hand and my blood pressure pills in the other. My knees were aching, and so was my heart. Her husband, Grady, had just come home, smelling like cheap beer and cheaper perfume, and they'd had another one of their whispered arguments behind closed doors. But this time, Charlene didn't hide it behind a forced smile or her usual half-hearted hug. She marched into the room like a storm cloud, eyes red but jaw tight, and said, "Mama, you've overstayed your welcome. You're holding us back." I blinked. For a moment, I thought I'd heard wrong. But she repeated it, louder, colder. Grady stood behind her, arms folded, smug as a cat that swallowed the canary. "We can't keep looking after you. You don't pay rent, you don't clean like you used to, and, let's be honest, you're not really part of this family anymore. Not part of this family anymore." That sentence pierced through me like sleet. The suitcase Charlene had packed for me, without my help, was already at the front door. My burgundy leather one, cracked at the corners, the same one I carried to college in '64. It hit the porch with a dull thud when she tossed it outside. "You can stay with one of your church friends," she said, voice sharp. "Or, I don't know. Figure it out. You're smart, right?" She slammed the door. And there I stood. In the pouring rain. In my slippers. On a Thursday night. I didn't even have my coat. The streetlights flickered above as I slowly walked toward the curb. The wind howled through the trees like it was warning me, or maybe mourning me. I looked back once at the house. No one peeked through the curtains. No one cared. For a moment, I stood still. Then I picked up my suitcase, wiped my wet face, rain or tears, I couldn't tell anymore, and whispered to myself, "I'm not going to die like this." I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it had to be anywhere but here. I didn't have a plan that night. No money, no phone, Charlene had taken it for emergencies. I had nothing but that old suitcase and my worn slippers, soaked through by the time I reached the end of the street. The rain was coming down hard now, needling my scalp, drenching my nightgown. Cars passed without slowing. I could have been a ghost, and no one would have noticed. There's a strange kind of silence in betrayal. It's not loud like in the movies. It's quiet, like the world's given up on you, and all that's left is the sound of your own breathing. I walked until my legs felt like jelly. Maple Ridge isn't a big town, but at night, with the streetlights flickering and everything closed up tight, it feels endless. My fingers were stiff from cold by the time I reached the corner gas station. The old Bluebird Mart, same place where I used to buy popsicles for Charlene when she scraped her knees at the playground. The boy behind the counter looked up, startled. He couldn't have been older than 20. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked, stepping around the register. I must have looked a mess, wet hair plastered to my cheeks, clutching my suitcase like it was a lifeline. I couldn't even speak at first. My voice was trapped behind years of silence. But I managed to whisper. "I just need to sit a moment." He brought me a folding chair, offered a styrofoam cup of hot cocoa, and didn't ask any more questions. I sipped it slowly, the warmth stinging my cracked lips. "You want to call someone?" he asked gently. I thought about it. But who would I call? My sister died 6 years ago. I had no brothers, no cousins nearby. The only people who might have cared were buried or long moved away. The truth was, I had spent so much time being strong that I hadn't let anyone be close. Not since Charlene got married. And that marriage, that man. Grady. He was charming in the beginning. Always smiling, always talking big, investments, growth, real estate dreams. Charlene had stars in her eyes. But even stars can burn cold. Over the years, I noticed things. The controlling way he held her arm when she spoke too long. The passive-aggressive jabs. The bank statements that never made sense. When I brought it up, Charlene said I was imagining things. And when I brought it up again, she said I could leave. But I didn't. Not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't leave her alone with that man. I stayed. I bit my tongue. I cooked their meals, cleaned their house, looked after their daughter, little Penny. I told myself, this is just a rough patch. She'll come back to me. 10 years passed that way. 10 years of walking on eggshells in my own daughter's home. 10 years of smiling through tears while Grady made jokes at my expense at the dinner table. 10 years of watching Charlene fade into someone I didn't recognize. And now, here I was. Homeless. Cold. Old. The boy behind the counter, bless his heart, offered to call someone from the nearby Grace Community Shelter. They got warm beds. And they're nice folks. You'll be safe there. I nodded. I didn't feel safe. But I was tired. Too tired to argue. When the van from Grace pulled up, an older black woman stepped out, wearing a bright yellow raincoat and a look of concern. Name's Laverne, she said, holding out a hand. Let's get you inside, sugar. She didn't ask questions. She just helped me into the van and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. Her touch was soft, but her presence was strong, like a tree that had seen many storms and refused to fall. As we drove away, I looked back once at the gas station's flickering lights. That was the moment I realized something. I had lost everything. But maybe now, I was finally free to find myself again. The shelter smelled like cinnamon oatmeal and old books. Not what I expected. I thought it would be cold and hard, like the jail cells you see in TV dramas. But Grace Community Shelter was gentle. Quiet. It looked like someone's grandmother had decorated it, with crocheted blankets on every cot and a worn Bible on the nightstand. There was even a golden lamp in the corner, warm and humming like a fireplace. Laverne led me down a short hallway. We don't ask too many questions here, she said softly, unlocking the door to a small private room. We just listen when you're ready. That sentence stuck with me. Because no one had really listened to me in over a decade. Not since Charlene met Grady. Every time I tried to speak, about the bruises I noticed on her arms, about the strange bank withdrawals, about how he treated Penny, Charlene would shut me down. Don't meddle, Mama. I'm not a child. But she was. She had just been pretending to be grown. And I had let her pretend, while I quietly carried the weight of her world. Now, here I was, alone in a stranger's shelter. My slippers were still wet, and I hadn't brushed my teeth, but for the first time in years, I exhaled without fear. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, remembering. The day Charlene graduated college. I was so proud I cried during the entire ceremony. She wanted to be a teacher, just like me. And then Grady came into the picture, slick hair, polished boots, big plans. He sold her a dream. Sold me a lie. It started slow. First, Charlene stopped calling me Mama. Then she moved me out of the guest room and into the basement. Grady said he needed space for his home office. Then the meals started disappearing from the fridge. Medications went unfilled. Penny stopped knocking on my door at night for bedtime stories. I was becoming invisible. And I let it happen because I thought love was about sacrifice. About endurance. But it turns out, love without respect is just servitude. The next morning, Laverne came back with a tray of oatmeal and black coffee. There's a little community center down the road, she said. They got folks your age doing crafts, reading, even yoga if your knees ain't too bad. You might like it. I chuckled. First time I'd laughed in weeks. Yoga? Me? But I took the tray and thanked her. You got a name, sugar? She asked. Henrietta May Colton, I said. She smiled. Henrietta May. That sounds like someone who's seen a lot and still standing. That's powerful. Her words didn't fix me, but they unlocked something in me, like a door that had been shut for years suddenly cracked open. Later that afternoon, I walked to the community center, wrapped in my second-hand coat from the shelter's donation closet. I sat quietly in a chair near the window while a group of women, most of them in their 60s and 70s, knitted and laughed around a table. One of them, a lively woman with bright silver hair named Darla, waved me over. You look like you know how to use your hands. Come knit with us. I told her I didn't know how. She handed me a pair of needles anyway. Then now's the time to learn. That's how it started. Little by little, I began to feel like a person again. But I still had nightmares. Nightmares of Grady's voice. Of Charlene's cold stare. Of Penny, sitting silently at the dinner table while the grown-ups tore love apart. And worst of all, I had this feeling deep in my bones that something was wrong. Very wrong. Because I remembered the last thing I heard before Charlene threw me out. We need the space, Grady. Mama's always watching. She's going to figure it out. Figure out what? That question kept me up at night. And something inside me said, go back. Find out. 2 weeks passed. I was settling into a routine at the shelter. Every morning, I'd help Laverne fold laundry or serve oatmeal. Every afternoon, I sat with the women at the community center, pretending to learn how to knit, though my hands always moved slower than my mind. I didn't tell anyone that my thoughts were miles away. I kept hearing Charlene's voice in my head. Mama's always watching. She's going to figure it out. Figure out what? The more I thought about it, the more things started to line up in strange, crooked ways. Like how Charlene never let me near their mail after the 3rd year I moved in. Like how Grady always kept a drawer in his home office locked, even when he was out of town. Like how Penny, sweet little Penny, once said, Mommy said if you tell anyone about the papers, Daddy might get mad and take us away. That had been almost a year ago. I didn't press. I didn't want to scare her. But now I wished I had. So I made a decision. I didn't tell Laverne. I didn't tell Darla. I just woke up one Wednesday morning, packed the coat and slippers into my suitcase, and rode the 10:10 a.m. bus back toward Maple Ridge. Charlene and Grady lived in a 2-story brick home near the corner of Bellflower Street. Cookie-cutter suburban. It was the kind of neighborhood where the houses all smiled politely, but you never knew what went on behind closed blinds. I walked slowly down the sidewalk, pulling my old suitcase behind me. The wheels squeaked. Their car was gone. A blessing. That gave me time. I didn't have a key anymore. But I knew the back kitchen window didn't lock right. Grady always said he'd fix it, but he never did. I used to worry about burglars. I never imagined I'd be the one slipping through it. Inside, everything looked the same. Too clean. Too quiet. Penny's drawing still decorated the fridge, crayon suns and lopsided stick figures. My old rocking chair was gone. Replaced by some cold metal bar stool. I moved quickly, hands trembling. Grady's office door was unlocked. That surprised me. Maybe he got cocky. Or maybe, he thought I'd never come back. I opened drawers carefully. Files. Receipts. Tax documents. But then, at the very bottom, behind a stack of real estate brochures and property tax statements, I found an unlabeled manila folder, thick and sealed with a metal clasp. Inside? Photocopies of my signature. Dozens of them. I froze. Bills in my name. Property deeds I didn't own. Even a life insurance policy, on me, listing Grady as the beneficiary. I felt my breath catch in my throat. He had been forging my signature. Using my credit. Using my identity. For years. I remembered now how Charlene would bring me forms to sign. "It's just so you can stay on our family account," she'd say. Just paperwork. I never read them. I wanted to believe her. Tears welled up in my eyes. They had bled me dry, financially, emotionally, while smiling to my face. And when I had nothing left to give, they tossed me out like yesterday's newspaper. That folder was proof. Proof that they weren't just careless, they were cruel. Calculated. Suddenly, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Tires crunching the gravel. My heart stopped. They were home. I stuffed the folder into my coat and backed out through the kitchen, careful not to make a sound. My knees ached. My breath was short. But I made it down the street before I heard the front door open. I didn't stop walking until I was back at the bus station. On the ride back to the shelter, I clutched that folder like it was oxygen. I didn't know exactly what to do with it yet, but I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. They thought I was weak. They forgot I raised a daughter while burying a husband. They forgot I fought cancer at 60. They forgot I survived heartbreak, poverty, and loneliness. But they were about to remember who Henrietta May Colton really was. I always thought lawyers were for rich people. Or crooks. Or TV characters with shiny teeth and fancy words. But Clarence Dupree was none of those. He had a small office above the old bakery on Myrtle Avenue. I found his name from a pamphlet pinned to the community board at Grace Shelter. The paper was wrinkled, the ink faded, but something about the words "free legal aid for seniors" made me tear it down like it was heaven sent. Clarence looked about 65, with thick glasses and suspenders that didn't match his shirt. He reminded me of an old student of mine who never paid attention in class but always managed to get the right answer. He listened without interrupting as I laid the folder between us and told him everything, how Charlene had tricked me into signing papers, how Grady forged my name, and how they drained me of everything I had. He didn't say much while I spoke. But when I finished, he leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers, and said, "Henrietta, this is fraud. And not just fraud, felony fraud. They could go to prison for this." Prison. That word made my chest tighten. I didn't want to see my daughter in handcuffs. No mother does. But I also wasn't going to pretend anymore. Not after everything they'd done. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I just want my life back. I want them to know they can't treat people like this." Clarence nodded. "Then let's start by stopping them from doing it to someone else." The next few days moved fast. Clarence helped me file a report with the Texas Department of Aging and Disability, and with the local police, who opened an investigation. The shelter's director, Laverne, offered to be my emergency contact. And Darla? That silver-haired firecracker? She brought me lemon cake every afternoon and told me, "Whatever happens, honey, you're not going back to that house unless it's to collect your apology." It was exactly 16 days after I visited the lawyer when Charlene showed up at the shelter. I was sitting in the garden behind the main building, planting tomatoes with one of the volunteers, when I heard her voice. "Mama." I turned around. She looked thin. Pale. Nervous. Grady wasn't with her. She walked toward me slowly, like she was afraid I might throw a tomato at her. I stayed quiet. My hands were still buried in the dirt. "They came to the house," she said, her voice trembling. "Some guy from the state. Said I'm under investigation. That you filed a complaint." I wiped my hands on my apron and stood up. "Not a complaint. The truth." Charlene swallowed hard. Her eyes were glassy. "Mama, I didn't know what he was doing. Grady told me it was just paperwork. That it was all for tax breaks. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said firmly. "You didn't care enough to ask." She broke then. Right there in the garden. Dropped to her knees in front of me, like she had when she was 5 and lost her favorite doll. But this wasn't about dolls. This was about trust. Dignity. 10 years of silence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I let him poison everything. You were right. I just didn't want to believe it." I looked down at her and for the first time, I didn't see my daughter, I saw a woman who made a choice. Maybe not to hurt me, but to let me be hurt. And that's almost worse. You didn't just betray me, Charlene. You turned your back when I needed you most. You let a man destroy your mother. She sobbed harder. Her hands clutched my apron like she was drowning. Grady's gone. He left town when the investigators came. Took our savings. I don't even know where Penny is, he took her too. My knees almost gave out. Penny. You let him take her? I didn't know, he said he was just taking her to school. He never came back. I closed my eyes. My head was spinning. The anger was a slow burn now, steady and controlled. You need to call the police. Right now. She nodded, still weeping, reaching for her phone. Back inside, I sat alone in the dining hall with a glass of water. My hands were trembling. I didn't know what was coming next. But I did know this. Charlene had fallen into her own trap. And now, Grady was on the run with my granddaughter. And if she thought Henrietta May was going to sit quietly and let that man disappear with that child, she forgot who raised her. My heart hadn't beaten that fast since I went into labor with Charlene in the back of my daddy's pickup truck. But this time, the pain wasn't in my body, it was in my chest, deep and sharp, because Grady had taken my granddaughter. By nightfall, the police had filed a formal Amber Alert. Charlene finally found the courage to hand over everything. Grady's phone number, his mother's address in Arkansas, even the old storage unit he used to rent when he wanted to clear his head. Clarence, my lawyer, got involved immediately. And Laverne, bless her sweet soul, held me like I was her own sister when I broke down in the shelter hallway. But I didn't cry long. I had cried enough. Now I was planning. The detective on the case, Officer Mallory Baines, was young but sharp. She had this way of looking at you like she saw straight through the nonsense. I liked her immediately. "We think he's headed north," she said, tapping her pen against a printed map of the region. "There was a toll charge on his car registered outside of Pine Hollow, a small town 2 hours away. You recognize it?" I did. My late husband had a fishing cabin out there. We hadn't been there in over 30 years. But Grady must have known. I cursed myself for ever letting him hear those stories over dinner. "He's got Penny," I whispered. "He'll use her to stay hidden. She's too sweet. Too obedient. We'll find them, Mrs. Colton. I promise you that." But I didn't wait for promises. I made my own. The next morning, I borrowed a car from Darla's neighbor, an old Buick with one good headlight and a gospel CD stuck in the player. I packed my pills, a sweater, a box of oatmeal cookies, and the last photo I had of Penny and me, taken under the big pecan tree in the yard before things got ugly. As I drove toward Pine Hollow, the sky darkened. The wind picked up. But I didn't care. I was a woman on a mission. A grandmother looking for her baby. I stopped at gas stations. Showed Penny's photo to clerks. Asked about a tall man with slick hair and a silver tongue. Most folks hadn't seen anything. Until one old woman behind the counter at a roadside diner said, "You talking about the man with the little girl?" "Yeah, he came through here 2 nights ago. Bought a tank of gas and 2 cheeseburgers. Said he was visiting an uncle." "Did the girl seem scared?" I asked. She nodded slowly. Quiet. Wouldn't make eye contact. Something didn't sit right. That was enough for me. By the time I reached the cabin, half swallowed by weeds and pine trees, it was nearly sunset. I left the car down the road and walked through the woods on foot. My niece screamed with every step, but I kept going. Because I knew Grady. I knew how he thought. Sure enough, smoke curled from the chimney. I moved around back, slow and silent. The window was cracked. I peeked inside and saw him, Grady, sitting at the table, talking on the phone. "I'll sell the documents if I have to," he said. "She's just an old woman. She won't push it." My blood turned to fire. Then I heard Penny. Her soft voice, humming in the next room. My chest ached at the sound. She was alive. She was okay, for now. I stepped away from the window and called Officer Baines. "He's here. Cabin on Bear Creek Road. Tell them to come now." "We're 10 minutes out," she said. "Stay put, Mrs. Colton. Do not go inside." But I was already halfway to the door. I didn't knock. I opened that door with the strength of every woman Grady had underestimated in his life. He turned, shocked. "Henrietta? Where's Penny? You don't belong here." "Where is she?" He took a step forward, thinking he could scare me. But he didn't know that I had nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. "You stole from me. Lied to me. And now you're holding my granddaughter hostage like she's your bargaining chip?" I hissed. "That child has more love in her little finger than you'll ever understand." Then I saw her, Penny, peeking out from behind the hallway curtain, eyes wide. "Grandma," she whispered. I opened my arms. "Come here, baby." She ran. She ran like her soul recognized mine. And I held her tighter than I ever had before. That's when the sirens came. Flashing lights behind the trees. Grady tried to bolt. But Officer Baines tackled him to the dirt like a linebacker at the Super Bowl. Penny and I rode back to town in the backseat of a patrol car, wrapped in blankets and each other. She didn't say much. Just looked up at me with teary eyes and whispered, "I knew you'd come." I kissed her forehead. "I'll always come for you." Grady was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for fraud, child endangerment, and identity theft. He tried to blame it all on Charlene. Said she was the mastermind. But the documents, the recordings, the witnesses, and Clarence's relentless fire, proved otherwise. The judge called it a shocking abuse of trust against a senior citizen. I called it the end of a long nightmare. Charlene didn't escape consequences either. She faced civil penalties. Lost her job at the real estate firm. The court ordered her to pay restitution, not that I expected to see a penny of it. But I didn't want the money. I wanted accountability. I wanted her to look me in the eye and understand what she'd done. It took weeks before I agreed to see her. She came to the shelter where I was still staying, holding a paper bag of peaches, my favorite, and a trembling apology on her lips. "I was weak, Mama," she whispered. "I was scared of him. Scared of being alone. I let him convince me you were a burden." "I was a burden," I said softly. "Because I carried all your weight for you. And you got used to it." She cried. Deep, gut-wrenching sobs. And I let her. Because for once I didn't rush to comfort her. I let her sit in the pain she helped create. But forgiveness is a funny thing. It's not loud. It's not quick. It's a slow walk down a long road. I didn't forgive her that day. But I let her see Penny. And when I saw the way she held that child, fragile, like porcelain, I knew there was still something good left in her. Maybe motherhood had broken her. But maybe, just maybe, it could also heal her. As for me, I never went back to that house on Bellflower Street. Instead, I used the small grant Clarence helped me apply for and rented a tiny cottage on the edge of Maple Ridge, near the old train station. The porch creaks, the floor leans to the left, and the water pressure is unpredictable. But it's mine. Every inch of it is mine. Laverne helped me plant a garden in the back. Collard greens, rosemary, and tomatoes. Darla visits every Sunday with banana pudding and gossip. And Penny? She comes over after school every Tuesday. We do puzzles. Eat jelly sandwiches. Watch old westerns until she falls asleep on my shoulder. She calls me Nana now. Says it sounds stronger than Grandma. I like that. I've learned something in these last few months. Breaking free doesn't always look like a dramatic exit. Sometimes it looks like a woman packing her slippers and stepping out into the rain. Sometimes it's a whisper in the mirror saying, I deserve more. Sometimes it's learning how to start over at 78. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm awake. I lost 10 years to silence. But now? Now I live loud.